we asked all three of you to pick a particular clip, highlight, moment in Uzi I's career. We will go Jacob, Tyler, Emily in that order. So Jacob, which highlight did you pick from Uzi I's career?
So a lot of people may look at the box score on this and say that it was a wash, which it was. But there's a little bit more symbolism, especially reflecting on the 2013 World Finals in Los Angeles at the Staples Center, which was the first time we saw Uzi and Faker play against one another. And both of them were rookies. Those were their first full seasons of year in 2013 after joining Royal Starhorn Royal Club and SK Telecom T1 the winter prior in both instances. And I think obviously like T1 was a team that kind of just ran through that and demolished them, and we saw that happen to Uzi again in 2014 as well against Samsung White. But there's a little bit of symbolism there that, you know, for the first time ever we saw these two guys in their respective regions in China and in South Korea that really, like, we didn't know what we were watching, right? Like, we knew that SK Telecom T1 was great. We knew that Starhorn Royal Club was relatively great too. But we didn't understand that two of the players back then that we were watching would go on to change the game in the way that both of them respectively have, as we have just mentioned. And I think, you know, rewatching some of that before this episode we are streaming right now of this show, like, there's something really special there, because both of them, if you look, like, they both look incredibly so young, which is sort of like interesting having seen them in person over the years too. But now I think for them, you know, like, they're veterans now, and they weren't then, and just sort of their success is sort of it takes you back when you think about their careers overall, and this was sort of the beginning for me was this final, albeit Royal got ran over, and you can say all what you want about it, but nonetheless, like, that World Championship is really a turning point moment for a lot of people, and I think it was a turning point in an era of League of Legends, which these two guys sort of championed.
I also think when it comes to that final, I think these two players, Faker and Uzi, they both transcended their regions. I think a lot of early esports was very nationalistic, where it's like, I'm going to watch until, you know, the Westerners are in the tournament. When the Westerners fall out, I'm not watching anymore. Someone coming from StarCraft, that was very prevalent for a lot of tournaments, where it's like, okay, I'm going to watch for Huck. I'm going to watch for Idra. I'm going to watch for Jinro. And then when those guys go out in, like, the first round, and it's, you know, all South Korean players left, it's like, okay, I don't care about these guys, don't care. I think having Uzi and Faker, both of these prodigies, rise up at the same time during this kind of boom for League of Legends, first real world championship in the Staples Center, an iconic arena. You have these two players that kind of transcended their regions, where it became a thing of, like, it didn't matter if they were Chinese, South Korean, Brazilian, North American, European. It didn't matter. These two players kind of transcended all of that, and people saw these two players as just amazing League of Legends players. And we've seen them both transcend that as the years gone by, where Faker, you know, broke records when he streamed on Twitch for the first time, and a lot of that was a Western audience, and he wasn't speaking English. He had a translator, but I really do credit these two for really transcending esports and really bringing it to a more international feel, where a lot of early esports was really nationalistic. So 2013, not the greatest final, pretty bad final, all things considered, but an amazing story, and I don't think I'd want it any other way. I think that final set up so many great things that we can look back on now. So, you know, fun event.
Tyler,
yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead.
When I think of this final, I think of a lot of things. One, I actually think of how much Uzi grew as a person following this, because I think, and again, he said this in interviews, so I don't feel like I'm, you know, dunking on him or anything by saying this, but he admitted, he was like, I was kind of a brat. Like, I was not pleasant to deal with. I was not pleasant to my teammates. And this is when they were kind of like finalizing what became or what they ended up calling like the raise the puppy strategy, where it was like, you are going to make sure that Uzi gets to mid to late game so he can just carry you. And that was the strategy behind Starhorn, and it became known as, this is kind of how Uzi became known as this like very resource hungry, very loud bot lane voice that he actually into history, right? And it started here. And I think if you go back, and I know he did like a really good, I want to say like hour-long interview with Froskeren in 2018, if I recall, regarding his own maturity and growth as a person through League of Legends. And it's really interesting to hear him talk about this final specifically, and also just what he thinks of himself then, and how he's grown from it as a person and as a player and as a teammate. So whenever I think of this final, that's actually what I think of is like the proto Uzi. It's like you see flashes of who he would become, and he's still through this to kind of the point that we've all been talking about. He gave the LPL a face. Like for a while, when people who were watching the LPL were like, no, you need to pay attention to like OMG, you need to pay attention to Cool, you need to pay attention to WE, you need to pay attention to, like EDG when they came up, and Name, like everyone internationally was like, yeah, but where's Uzi? Like, where is he? And that started at the 2013 World Championship because he was the star of his team.
Tyler, what's your memory?
My memory takes me back to the fall of 2017. I was in Shanghai for the World Championship. I had already been there for, 2 weeks at that time, I believe. It was awesome. It was like, oh man, the Chinese fans are amazing. They're so, into it. It's so exciting. It's awesome. It's incredible. And then RNG SKT semifinals. Me and my colleagues, Elaine and Rachel, were walking to the arena, and there's just miles of fans just all around the arena. And I'm like, is there some other event going on beside the League of Legends? Because sometimes, there'll be a league event, and then there'll be a sporting event next to it, and it's a giant group of people. No, it was like Coachella out there. And what we learned is that they were all, there was probably over 100 scalpers all looking and for selling tickets.
Wow.
Because this was the hottest ticket, not in just Shanghai. I believe it was the hottest ticket in China. There were tickets going for over $1,000 American just to get into the building to watch RNG versus SKT on that day, the semifinals, to see who would go to the Bird's Nest in Beijing. I fondly remember our press, coordinators at Riot basically coming up to us, all the press, and basically being like, hide your press badges. Do not show your press badges to anyone outside because someone will steal them. And truth be told, when we left and we would go outside to try to because to get out from the press room into the arena, you would have to go outside. People would be running up to you and just harassing you for your press badge. It's nothing like I've experienced before in esports.
I was going to ask, you weren't one of those 100 scalpers with your media badge, were you?
No, you could have made a really pretty penny. You would have made a lot of money that day if you wanted to sell that press badge. You would be blacklisted forever from Riot, but you probably would get a little nice payday in Shanghai. But just the atmosphere in that arena is unmatched. It was the loudest. It was full. 18,000, no seats were left up. All those scalp tickets were sold. People spent thousands of dollars to get into that arena to watch Faker versus Uzi one more time. A legendary battle. I remember it was 2-1, and RNG was one game away. One game away from Uzi finally beating Faker and going to the finals, where they would play Samsung, a team they had already beat in the group stage. It was perfectly set up for Uzi to have his golden moment, and it all fell sideways, where Faker kind of 1v9'd everyone, played Galio. It was amazing. And I will never forget it was the loudest I've ever heard an arena, and then the RNG fans were so deflated after that match. It was just, from top to bottom, I will never forget that day. It just kind of showed how big League of Legends is in China, where people are willing to shell out $1,000, $2,000 to get into arena just to watch Uzi play Faker in that rivalry that has been going on for so many years, where it's no mistake that the one year that Uzi had his most success, 2018, where he won 2 LPL titles and MSI, was the one year Faker was nowhere to be seen. That was the year where SKT was awful and didn't make it was the only year Faker has not been to a final of anything, and that was the year Uzi rose to the top. So those two are always going to be discussed side to side, but that semifinal is one of the greatest best of fives of all time, greatest atmosphere of all time, and I will never forget that day.
Emily, your moment is from 2018.
Yeah, so I'll like preface this with a little anecdote from 2017 All-Stars, because for people who don't know, I mentioned it previously, Uzi had been trying to win a domestic title since 2013. And he, as of late 2017, had still not won a domestic title. And so when the LPL All-Star team won in Los Angeles, they actually all tried to hand the trophy directly to Uzi just so he could like raise the trophy. And he was like, no, like, please don't give this to me. Like, stop doing this to me, guys. You're embarrassing me, kind of thing. And they made him lift it. And then he was like, please lift this with me. Like, please stop. In like a good natured way, but he was just like, come on, you guys. Like, and I always remember that when I think of him raising the trophy in 2018, because more than anything, this is such a cathartic moment for him, because the narrative had always been, yeah, sure, people know, like, international fans know of Uzi, but he's never been able to win at home. Like, never. He's always had, like, either bad luck or his team, like, just barely loses or whatever, like, you want to say about it. He was never going to win domestically. And when he, like, the moment he was actually able to raise that LPL trophy in 2018 was such a great moment if you had been watching Uzi throughout his career, because he is just so, like, overwhelmed and happy, and you can see the kind of, like, pressure or, like, whatever weight he was carrying because he hadn't won, just kind of, like, lift off his shoulders, right? It is just, like, a awesome moment to watch for anyone, really, but, like, especially people who had known how much he wanted to win domestically and how much it bothered him that he hadn't been able to win a domestic title. And that kind of started his near golden run of LPL Spring, MSI, Asian Games. I also believe Rift Rivals is in there, LPL Summer, and then falling to G2 at the 2018 World Championship.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that like first LPL trophy lift for him is just like a great, awesome moment that was a real joy to watch, to be honest.
I love that story about the trophy. That whenever that happens in sports, you know, you have like a famed athlete that just can't quite win the championship,
Ray
and
Bork.
they finally do. Yeah, Ray Bork is the example. Exactly the example I was going to say. When he finally wins the Stanley Cup in his last year in the National Hockey League, the captain, Joe Sakic, grabs the cup, doesn't even lift it, passes it right on to Ray Bork, and it was like one of the most iconic championship moments in all of sports. So for Uzi's teammates to do that for him in that moment, I think that's like the ultimate show of respect, really. Like, I'm going to reserve my celebration because you deserve this moment a lot more than I do because you've given so much to the game. So that's a really cool moment.
It was really funny to compare it to the LPL like All-Star, because like in that he was super embarrassed. He's like, please stop doing this to me. But when they did it to him with the LPL trophy, he was just like, yes, like this is my moment. And he like lifts the trophy up, and it's so good.
So those are our moments, and feel free to flood chat with some of your favorite moments from Uzi's career. Before we move on, we're going to talk about the LCS and LEC and preview what's to come there. Let's just give some final thoughts. Let's take 30 seconds and let's just give one final thought or one final anecdote about Uzi. We'll go around the horn with it. Jacob, why don't we start with you?
That in the 2016 World Championship, similar to what Tyler was talking about with sort of the line to get out the door, like I saw that for a Royal Never Give Up fan signing outside that was like unofficial, and it was just like droves of people on the streets of Chicago, and I was just like, holy crap, right? Like they may not have been, particularly in that era of League of Legends pre-2018, like they were not the most successful League of Legends Chinese team. However, they were, at least domestically, and they were, though, by far the most famous. And sort of that profile, like, no matter where you went, that was clearly the case with him. And I think, like, I don't know, like, it's sort of astounding. I don't think that, you know, we had, obviously last week we had on the Survey Monkey for trivia, people said who is the best player to never win a world championship, and the answer was Uzi, and I think that's what most people